Good day. Welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halperin. We devote the full hour today to the extraordinary historical revelations in the just released documents related to the Kennedy assassination. We have team coverage. Sean Spicer in Washington, Dan in New York. We will run through every extraordinary new piece of information about what had been, up until last night, one of the biggest mysteries in American history. But now it can be told. Sean.
Yep. Geraldo is very proud that he is now in good company after the vault story. We'll see. There's obviously a lot of documents to go through, but aside from someone calling Joe Biden a traitor in one of the documents, it doesn't seem like there's that much that has come out that is mind blowing.
I found it not just not mind blowing, just not even new. Like I read a bunch of stories right before this program, all the latest updates, and every news organization has 20 people going through them. Literally, all the stories, as far as I saw, say it remains to be seen what the revelations are. Even though they were up all night looking through them, I haven't seen a single thing that's been reported of any significance whatsoever. So there you go. Welcome to the morning meeting. Instead of the Kennedy assassination documents, we'll cover some other stuff today. If you're here in the two-way platform, would like to be part of the conversation, as some have already done, please raise your hand. It's Wednesday, which means we need 3 new people or the show is canceled. So please, new people, but also our returning regulars, love to have you. If you're watching on X or YouTube, my goodness, you just disregard when I say no smack in the chat. We want everyone to be welcome here. And if you're MAGA and you write scatologically personal negative attacks on other people on the program who happen to disagree with you, it's not great for business. So please don't do that. I'll run through the day and then we'll have a conversation and then we'll take your questions. Couldn't be happier to have you here. President of the United States, as of now, has a pretty light schedule, at least as announced. He's got nothing public. He's got his intelligence briefing at 11, and then at 1, his White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, briefs. It is said by the Ukrainians that at some point today the president will get on the horn with Vladimir Zelensky to talk about everything that's happening with Russia and Ukraine. Don't know when that call is, or if it's actually happening, but the Ukrainian state is. I don't believe the American government has confirmed that. Don't know what the vice president's doing. Last night, he surprised us by turning up in Washington at an event on tech in which he gave, I would say, by my count, at least his third extremely significant speech on policy, once again laying down a reality that guy is yards and yards ahead of any other Republican who'd like to run for president by many measures. As Sean pointed out, he's taking over the job of finance chief of the National Party and giving these big speeches, big staff, supported by all sorts of people in the party, including de facto kingmaker Charlie Kirk. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I don't know what he's doing today. He'll pop up somewhere. Fed, 2 p.m. announcement on the rate decision, and they'll talk about where they think the economy stands after their policy meeting. 2:30, the chair has a press conference, and we'll see what he has to say about the economy. By the
Mark, do you
afternoon,
think we hear from Trump today if he announces that they're worrying about inflation and that they've gone from like a likely to cut to likely to not? You think Trump whacks away today?
I mean, on Truth Social, I don't know what the bar will be for him to talk today. They'd have to put on an event, but obviously they could. But
No, but they have don't they have something at 3 executive orders or something?
that's not on the schedule right now, unless you saw an update. I haven't seen that.
I think they should just call it playtime.
District Court Judge James Boasberg has given the administration until midday to provide details about what he says was the order that they defied about the deportation of 250 Venezuelan immigrants. There were a bunch of court decisions last night, mostly going against the administration on a range of things. Our policy here is to not tell you everything district court judges do. Wake us up when the Supreme Court is involved. All right. Speaking of the courts, Sean, last day, the Chief Justice sent chills down the president's spine. Just kidding. The Chief Justice said something the president could not have cared less about. Put out a statement saying the reaction to federal court decisions you don't like, the appropriate reaction is not to call for judges or justices impeachment. What impact will Chief Justice Roberts' missive have on our political and policy debates going forward, if any?
Well, I don't think any significant. I think that it's probably Dan's side that will grab onto this and say, this may be one of the areas that they, grab onto and say, even a Republican appointee to the Supreme Court is questioning him. I saw that yesterday. I will say this. There is a different. I mean, the president has a right, and I think not just a right, but I understand his frustration with the judicial system. And so to say we have, there comes a point at which we impeach people, that's actually the process, right? Meaning if a judge goes awry. And so I kind of find it fascinating, the analysis of this, right? Which is, if he had said, we're going to fire these people, we're going to haul them off to jail, that would be what, you would say something happens in a rogue country. Using the actual constitutional system to air your legitimate grievances is actually what the Constitution sets out. That is the framework. If you have a problem, you sue somebody, you go to court.
The only thing I'd say about that is it's typically not be seen as a way to resolve policy disputes. Typically, impeachment and removal is for, taking a sack of cash or.
So that's what impeachment's for. I think the Democrats missed that memo last cycle, because that's what impeachment's for. So when I just remember when President Trump took that,
like when you storm the Capitol, that's what
a high crime and misdemeanor is, we don't like what you did, or we don't think district court judges have authority. Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to steal your lines.
By the way, impeachment is, by the very definition of it, a political tool. That is what it is. Yeah. And again, all he said, just to be clear, is, I don't like this. I will follow the law, but that is literally what the law says. If you don't like it, there are avenues to express your legitimate grievances.
Dan, incorporating your answer to this, who do you think Justice Roberts' audience was for this? History, Trump, somebody else?
No, I think it was both. Look, one of the things about judges is they usually don't respond when attacked, right? Decorum and kind of the rules of the game are that the judges don't get involved in back and forth. And I believe Trump knows that very well. And so they are easy targets to smack at, to punch. It fires up your base, and it's great to swing away with nobody, coming back at you. So I think Roberts did it as a little bit of a fastball to say, hey, kind of back off. I think you don't want to get into a pissing match with John Roberts. And I think even Trump knew it, which is why he came out and said, I'm not going to defy the orders. I'm not going to do that.
All right. Well, let's
hold on. But to say that the judge in this case is a lunatic and he's rough on me and he's not kind of playing ball with me, that is not the role of judges, okay? You don't impeach a judge. Yes, Sean, you're right. That is the process. It is when there is high crimes or misconduct by a judge, you go after them. Or a president. If there are high crimes or misconduct, you have that fight, right? If the standard is, I don't agree with you, I can tell you now that when Democrats get back in power, say goodbye to Alito, say goodbye. Like, we will go after everyone then who overturned Roe versus Wade, because the country's with us on that, right? So, I mean, if that's what we're going to do,
again, let's just be clear. Let's just be clear what we're talking about. The president expressed his frustration. Okay,
yeah, but then he said, we should look at impeaching them. That was the next statement, because I don't like their rulings. I mean, that's what you're doing. If that's where we're going.
Okay, so let's just go through everything that Democrats have said about the court when Chuck Schumer said we should go after Gorsuch. You guys, I mean, not you, Dan, but obviously.
Well, we didn't.
But okay, so he hasn't impeached anyone, but yet we're going to have a whole conversation about what he means. But when the Democrats say something, we should take it with a grain of salt.
Sean, I said this yesterday, and I've said this for weeks. When Democrats have talked about packing the court and changing out justices, we have been attacked and lost. It's dumb. The American people have go back to FDR. They've never supported that. So when Trump says something like that, he is going to take heat, and he should. And I think he knows it.
Just to be clear, I think, again, all the case that I am making is not that I'm encouraging or supporting the impeachment of judges, which is that someone who has dealt what he has had to deal with in terms of the weaponization of the judicial system to express frustration is not crazy. And so far, he has done nothing but express that. I think right now, I actually think they will run through the appeals process, and actually a sane judge will agree that the executive has the right to do certain things to protect the country.
Right.
But I understand his frustration.
I think Roberts is in over his head, but here's what I think the issue is. And I agree with you, Sean, that this is all politics and people can say stuff, there's First Amendment, et cetera. The problem is that co-equal branch doesn't have an army, right? If people aren't going to listen to their rulings, it's a big problem for our system. It's one of the weaknesses in what was designed. And we've never had a president defy them in a way that created a constitutional crisis. What I think Roberts is concerned about is if you're going to run them down and say they're illegitimate, then people can start defying their rulings, not just the president, but corporations, individuals. We can't be in a situation where they have to enforce their rulings, or the Justice Department has to enforce their rulings in a way that requires coercion, because that's a slippery slope. Now, for those of you who happen to not watch Laura Ingraham every night, here's Donald Trump last night. I don't think this means a damn thing, I'll say, because Donald Trump could say something different tomorrow. But here's what he said last night, quite definitively, eventually, about whether he would ever defy a court ruling.
Apparently, I got Laura warmed up here.
Circumstances would you defy a court order?
Well, I think that, number one, nobody's been through more courts than I have. I think nobody knows the courts any better than I have. I would say the chief judge does, but nobody knows them better than I have. And what they've done to me, I've had the worst judges. I've had crooked judges. I have judges that valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million because that benefited his case, because he wanted to see me convicted of something. I have judges that had relatives making millions and millions of dollars on the election, ruling on the election.
But going forward,
I had judges that were so corrupt.
Because we all know that, and that was outrageous.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges, and these are judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think at a certain point you have to start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge. The judge that we're talking about, you look at his other rulings, I mean, rulings unrelated, but having to do with me, he's a lunatic.
All right, Dan, does that mean anything to you?
I mean, look, again, he's working the referees. He's stoking his base. I have never heard Trump lose in court or have an unfavorable ruling and say, well, I have a lot of respect for that judge. Every single time he trashes the judge, he trashes his opponent. He likes to create the us against them, good, bad. It's just what he does. I mean, it's almost like admirable as a political athlete that he's just always on that front foot. But it's obvious as day what he's doing.
Sean.
There you go. Those were the actual words. I've never defied one, and you can't. Full stop.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. I don't want to get enmeshed in Russia, Ukraine, because it's a moving target, and I don't think any of us know. But there is a sensibility. I've heard it here during my trip in Europe. You see it in some elite columnists, and not all of whom are hostile to Trump, who say trying to make a deal with Putin is a fool's errand, that he's just not going to make a deal, that he's just running out the clock, he's looking for advantage, and that the only deal he'll make is one that even, I say in air quotes, Trump couldn't make, and that Zelensky and Europe would oppose. So briefly, Sean, do you think Donald Trump is sensible to be trying to make a deal with Putin, or do you agree with those who say it just might not be there and he should be looking for more leverage over the Russians rather than a deal on the current terms?
So I guess the way I look at this is that it's like in lieu of what, right? So to me, this is a simple proposition of the status quo, which is you continue to fund Ukraine in a war that they will not win, that will result in more death and destruction. Okay, and we keep going for years, and we just, because that's option one, or you try to find a way out. Now, I don't know. I mean, the question is there a deal that we can get to, or a ceasefire? I'm
sorry, I was a little imprecise. I'm sorry to interrupt. Some people are saying they've talked about rhetorically more sanctions, for instance. Should he be trying to make a deal on the current terms, or should he say we're putting 100% sanctions on Russia and we're moving troops somewhere, whatever, to put more pressure on him? Or is there a deal to be had under the current terms.
So I think that Trump is going to feel at a certain point that Putin isn't taking him serious enough, that he is out there. He understands. I mean, the guy watches more, TV and reads more in the news. So he sees exactly what's happening. And as soon as he feels as though Putin is not respecting him at the level that is merited, he will ratchet it up. He is not going to sit back and let Putin publicly try to take advantage of the situation. So I believe that we will get to a point where either we will get to a deal, or Trump is going to say, I've been trying to do this. Let me show you what I can do to you.
Dan.
Mostly economic, by the way.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the $1 million question is how desperate is Trump for a deal, right? A deal for a deal's sake, because I think Putin is not stupid enough to do what Sean just said, which is to embarrass Trump. I think instead what he's going to do is just sweet talk him. He'll just give a little bit and then hope Trump feels like, okay, I'm getting closer. Let me go browbeat Zelensky and then give you more, Mr. Putin. Let me give you more, Mr. Putin. And he's going to just keep taking and taking because Trump is so desperate for a deal. Sean, I hear you about more people being killed. The Ukrainians are fighting for their country. They're asking us for the arms. It's not us putting our troops to be slaughtered on the front line. They are saying we want to be an independent nation. This, thug or tyrant is trying to take our country. Like that.
I'm well aware of what's at stake. And for
so
4 years, for 4 years, the Biden administration didn't give them what they needed.
Oh, but hold on a second, because you guys kept saying time to cut the arms and get out of this, make them, America first. That is why we did not send more, because Joe Biden, after about 6 months, had to beg and plead to get Republicans.
No, it's because for the first 2 years, you didn't give them the tools that they actually needed, the weaponry, the munition. It's fully documented what you didn't get.
Okay, well then you know what? You guys should give it to them to get leverage.
All right, we're not going to litigate this today, I don't believe, successfully anyway. All right, the Democrats, thank you for that.
Wait, so will we get a deal?
The three of us?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Yeah, we're just, the deal was we're just being brief on that today because we can't solve it, which is what I said in the introduction, but I was ignored as I typically am. The Democrats, all right, there are 4 buckets of potential leaders for the party, and I think everybody, except maybe James Carville, are leaders. There's the formal congressional leadership. There's backbenchers with big megaphones and aspirations. There's other people like governors and formers and maybe business leaders in the states. And then there's people who want to run for president in 2028 or might want to run for president in 2028. I think that in the last a few days, we've seen a lot of tension over tactics and strategy, but agreement on, I think, pretty solid agreement about what the message should be. So let's look at a couple pieces of tape and then you guys talk about it. First, here's Chuck Schumer on a program they call Morning Joe, giving the Democratic message that I think, again, almost every Democrat I know agrees is the right message. Please roll Schumer on Morning Joe.
You have others saying the same, that it's just time for a new generation of leadership. Yeah. What's your response to that?
I knew there'd be flack, but I think that the Democrats, we Democrats in the Senate are really united. We respect that there were different views. We know that. And we are fighting on all of the fronts to go after Trump, not have a circular firing squad, which Democrats tend to do, particularly when there's such an enemy as Trump. Mm-hmm. So that the basic premise that we are going after him on, and Hakeem and I are working on this very closely together. We don't live too far away from each other. We met in Brooklyn on Sunday, is that Trump is taking things away from the middle class, from you, to pay for tax cuts for the rich. And we have so many different areas to go after him on. And we're already bringing his numbers down. We'll keep bringing them down more and more and more. If, 6 months from now, his numbers are really low, he'll have not only less popularity, he'll have less authority. That's our job, and we're doing it. And there are going to be some bigger issues where we're going to make a stand as well. You got to do it in a smart way and not let him drive you into a trap and let your anger at him end up hurting you.
Sean, I'm old enough to remember that when a Republican said that their strategy was not to help the American people, but to drive the president's numbers down, that was a controversy. Nobody seems to mind.
That was Mr. Mitch McConnell that said that.
No, it was Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, and
No, no,
McConnell,
McConnell said
asked about
McConnell said
Obama.
it. Yeah,
He said,
you're
I'm
right.
going to make
Number
him
one job.
president.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Um,
But McCarthy said drive numbers down. Just let me frame it up here. Is Schumer on the right message? And we had the first House member call for him to resign yesterday. But is Schumer talking like that? If he can sustain that, has he solved the problem of
No.
people being angry at him or not?
No, when you're the one thing about crises is that like there's an arc and he's on the back end of it, right? So he either has to wait it out and hope that it goes away in 72
But he's
hours.
on the back end or the front end?
Back end. Like in other words, the wave is crested. He's already screwed. So like when you're riding it, the question is, are you over the top of that arc or not? I mean, last night in Axios, this was to me so emasculating. It said that the Democrat grassroots are giving Senator Schumer a pip. I mean, this is if anyone's working at a big corporation, it's called a performance improvement program. Like you're a junior, like associate, where they say, okay, you need to start coming in by 9 a.m. and be at your desk by 9:05. I mean, it's embarrassing what's happening to him. And then he puts out a statement and says, what was the thing? That he is I am the sort of orchestra leader and I have a lot of talent in that orchestra. That was his response. The guy is so far gone. I said it at the beginning of the week. I tweeted out last night. I think this is the beginning of the end for Chuck Schumer.
Dan, is Sean right, or has Schumer got the proverbial monkey donkey off his back?
He definitely doesn't have it off his back. I think Schumer is saying the right thing. The problem is he's been saying that now for about a month, but he doesn't do it. And that's where they kind of had it. So to Sean's point, the interest groups are now embedding themselves in his operation. I mean, we joked back in January that the Senate leadership council was like a UN of, half the caucus. Well, one of the things that he announced was he's adding more senators to the leadership council. So I think we're now more than half of them are in leadership. And he's bringing all the interest groups in to sit at the table. I think that the question, I think, really for Schumer and Mark, Sean and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I heard from someone who was watching the show who said it's very true. And that is Schumer following the course of Mitch McConnell, which is the party changed around them and McConnell never changed, right? Schumer was able to bridge the Clinton to Obama eras. I think we are now going into a new era where the party it's younger, it wants to get more aggressive, more nimble, confront Trump more. And Schumer is from that kind of old school, Wall Street Democrat Clinton era that it's just not in his wheelhouse. And I think he's saying the right thing, but the base is just do it.
Yeah, he's done. I mean, his time has come. And the problem is, as I said yesterday, it's not that I think a lot of people might agree that wasn't the hill to die on Friday night, right? But the problem was that he led him to that hill in the first place, and then said, "Hey, I'm out."
Sean, this is a serious, respectful question. Sometimes you and other people in the Republican Party and the Democrats do the same thing, will say on programs like this, I'm no expert on the other party, so I can't really say. Do you really feel you understand the dynamics well enough to be so confident that Schumer's done, given that it's the other party?
Yeah, and the reason I say that is that when you see the emasculating the groups from all sides, as Dan put out, I mean, these guys demanding seats at the table, him acquiescing at a certain point, you either are tough and strong at a position or you exhibit weakness. He canceled the book tour. He's caving to everything that they want. I mean, this isn't about the party. This is purely about what a leader does. And so it doesn't matter if it's the head of a corporation or the head of a Senate caucus. He's looking weak. He's showing signs of fecklessness. And that's when people say they strike. And you can rarely come back from those instances. When a leader shows weakness and fails to lead in the face of a crisis, that's when people lose confidence in them. He's lost the confidence of the grassroots. And I don't see how you get it back when you fundamentally don't understand the new dynamics in the new political environment. So it's not a question of whether I understand the party or not. It's whether or not he can continue to be a leader. And the answer, in my opinion, is absolutely not.
Mark, I think, though, look, I don't think Schumer's going anywhere in the next 18 months. And he probably, unless there's a total wipeout in 26, probably survives. The way McConnell began to get chipped away at, when more and more senators came in that were Trump senators, not kind of Reagan McConnell senators, he slowly was just losing altitude, and there was no way for him to kind of reverse that. I am beginning to wonder if Schumer will just kind of ride it on the back end here, but can he really be seen as the leader of whatever the future of the Democratic Party is? I think there is increasing questions about that. And I think it may go to the next topic about what some of these other governors are showing.
So let's get to that.
Can I just put a pin in this real quick? Because it's not like all I'm doing is reading tea leaves. When Nancy Pelosi publicly throws you under the bus, when Elizabeth Warren says he's not the leader anymore, that tells you that's not me, that's them. I'm just reading
Did Elizabeth Warren say Chuck Schumer's not the leader anymore?
She said something
she wouldn't support him.
She wouldn't support him.
I missed that.
Yeah, at a town hall in Massachusetts.
Yeah, she at a town hall. She was asked, "Do you support Chuck Schumer?" And she said, "No."
No, I missed that. That was not a big story here in Europe.
What?
Yeah. All right. Just real quick, because I do want to get it, folks in. If you want to be in the conversation here in the two-way platform, please raise your hand. In my career, there have been certain presidential candidates who struck at least private fear in the hearts and brains of the other party. George Bush in 1998, the Democrats knew if he ran, he'd be formidable. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, less Donald Trump, less Hillary Clinton, less John Kerry, less Mitt Romney. They were in the category of people on the other party kind of mocking them and saying, sure, make them the nominee. We'd welcome that. I look at all these Democrats, particularly Governor Walz right now, and all I see on the Republican side is mockery. Now, there was mockery of Trump, and Trump turned out to be a great candidate. But Walz, in particular, has become just the subject of MAGA derision. Here is Walz breaking Gavin Newsom's streak of having three consecutive guests on his podcast. This is Gavin Newsom from the right, and here he is in colloquy with Minnesota Governor Walz on his podcast.
But the bottom line is, and I think it goes back to what we began with, is, and I applaud you for this, is we cannot continue to be on the defense reacting to this. We've got to go on the offense. We got to meet people where they are. But I also think this, and this is where, this is part of the conversation I'm trying to have, is you got to respect people you disagree with, and you can't just dismiss people.
How do you fight it?
This notion
I think
of
I can kick most of their ass. I do think that if they want to do it. I know I can outrun them, but I don't know if we're going to fall into that place where we want to. Okay, we challenge you to a WWE fight here type of thing.
No, but it's a natural reaction. I think it's one of the reasons we're losing so many men. And again, it's multi-ethnic. It's not just white men. We're losing them. We're losing them to these guys online. We're losing them people that I'm bringing on this podcast as well. That's why I brought.
These are bad guys, though. These are bad guys.
But they exist, and we could deny they exist. They exist. Not only they exist, they persist, and they're actually influencing young kids every single day.
How do we push some of those guys back under a rock?
I think we have to first understand what their motivations are. I think we have to understand what they're actually doing. And
you don't
think
think
that's
it's racism and misogyny?
I think there's a lot of that, but I don't think it's exclusively that. When you talk to a guy like Steve Bannon, he talks about working folks, and he talks about how we hollowed out the industrial core of this country. I understand that, but we can dismiss the notion of election denialism. We could completely dismiss what he did on January 6th, but I don't think you can dismiss what he's saying. Reminds me a lot of what Bernie Sanders was saying. Reminds me a lot of what Democrats said 20, 30 years ago.
All right, so I continue to tell you, Gavin Newsom understands what's going on in America better than a lot of people give him credit for. But I look at Walz and how Republicans are treating him, and I just say, I don't get what he's up to. So, Dan, I'll ask you the question. You can pick one of those two guys or someone else. And the answer is not Fetterman. And if you need me to explain why, I will. Who right now is the leader of the anti-Trump coalition in America? What Democratic politician is the leader of that coalition? If you had to pick one.
Well, I'm going to give you two, because I think there's two factions right now.
Yeah.
I think the emerging leader of the kind of hell no, burn the thing down, full frontal attack on Trump is becoming J.B. Pritzker. He is unapologetic in public speeches, in private. He is not backing down. We can debate if that is the right strategy, but I think increasingly he is unafraid. and he's got a perch from Illinois, and he's, you know, a fairly safe blue state for now. On the other hand, Gavin Newsom does appear to be kind of going into the lion's den, or as you said, bring the lions into his den, and is beginning to talk about, I mean, I thought that clip was fantastic because, and I see the chat is exploding. That is the conversation we need to have as a party, right? I may not like, or people may not like what side of that coin the party chooses, but like we're having it now. And so I think there are two lanes so far that are carved out. I think Rahm Emanuel probably wishes to kind of straddle the two. I think Tim Walz, what is interesting is Walz is starting to talk about the failures of the campaign. He's beginning to kind of appear more and kind of speak in English. So I don't think Walz is likely going to be the nominee, but this is all good, I think, for the Democratic Party. This needs to happen in the next 12 months.
Sean, who's the most effective leader of the anti-Trump coalition now?
I mean, I will say this to Dan's point. I mean, I guess it depends on how you define it, but I would say that the one that actually gets the most attention is AOC. I don't think that she's capable of like running or leading the effort, but when she does the interviews, she breaks through. She's passionate. I think people actually feel like she's leading. I mean, you look at some of these clips and people want to fight. They want and she's willing to do it. Like I said, I don't look at her as a leader of a movement, but she's at least willing to go on there and fight. I look at I mean, I got to be honest with you. That was like phony and phonier when that conversation. I mean, Walt's just, it's almost like he's like, what can I say to make it look like I'm tough? I'm going to say I'm going to kick their ass on a WWE. Like, I'm sorry, that guy doesn't look like he can. Well, I'll just. It doesn't come across as authentic or genuine in any way. I think Gavin is like trying to have a conversation, and Waltz is trying to look tough, and that's it. And I would take either one of them. To me, I think Gavin could probably raise more money, and he's got better hair, but that's it. I mean, it's sad.
Look, I don't think it's sad because it's 3.5 years away. This is when we should have these conversations. Like we really should. Like, look,
doesn't the coalition need a leader now?
No, it doesn't.
No?
It doesn't. No,
How about a role model of effectiveness?
What's that? You cut
How
out.
about a role model of effectiveness?
Look, go back to Republicans 4 years ago, 3 years ago. You had one faction saying Ron DeSantis was Donald Trump without the baggage. You had another faction saying Donald Trump is, Moses off the mountain. And then you had a few that were like Nikki Haley is like neither of them. So they had that fight, right? And so like we have to have this.
But we had. First of all, I would agree with you. There was two. You were either Trump or you were, hey, I want Trump without some of the personality.
Yeah,
and that was it. But we're kind of all in the same agreement direction wise, but we just got to figure out which is the right guy. One or two.
There wasn't, because the feeling was Trump couldn't get off the grievances of 2020 in his first term, and DeSantis was talking about the future. And so you had Ken Griffin.
But my point is, there was no difference in policy. It was who's the best leader, right? And that was it.
We didn't really know what Trump's vision was for 2.0 yet. At the time, he was not very. We knew what he was against. It was Joe Biden. We did not know what he was for yet, right? So I think this is what happens. We're only 4 months or 5 months since the actual November 5th. This is what happens. This is what happens. And look, stand by for candidates that run in 2026 that none of us know, in districts that none of us are watching, who strike a chord with the electorate and make some noise, because they'll emerge. They always do.
All right, Alex, sponsored by Adidas. Welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please. Thank you for joining.
How's everyone doing? Good morning, guys. Pleasure to be on.
Thank you for being on.
And my question for you is, I saw a post earlier from Waltz about checking Tesla stock and how it's doing and everything. I really wanted to see if you guys think that's really good messaging from the Dem side.
Did you see Elon's tweet about it?
I didn't see that yet, actually.
Yeah, Elon tweeted, I don't know when, but relatively recently, that Waltz said it cheers him up to check the stock regularly, and Musk said it cheers me up to see that the vice president is JD Vance.
Well played.
You're asking, is it good messaging to go after to sort of mock?
I hear you guys talking about Waltz too, and I
Yeah,
really don't see where
yeah,
they're coming from lately. I
yeah,
don't leader, and I see him trying to rise above, but
yeah.
crashing an American
Great.
company that's
Yep.
like one of the top
Great.
companies in the world.
Yep. Great question. Mocking Tesla, mocking Musk. Dan, are you a fan of that?
Look, I think it's small, but does it get clicks? Does it get attention? It's, like Trump trolling Joe Biden on the auto pen. Like, it gets people fired up. They think it's funny. Stocks go up, stocks go down. I would not bet against Musk as a businessman in the long run, but liberals love it. Just the way the MAGA loves when they troll, Kamala Harris for word salad.
Sean.
I actually, by the way, Elon did a great interview last night on Hannity where he explains it and he puts the what's at stake in context. I think if you're going after Elon, Dan, you said this before, you're losing. I mean, Elon's not going to run. He's the heat shield for so much that's happening. So if Tim Waltz or anyone else, frankly, wants to attack Elon, you're missing the broader point. And I don't know that Elon cares, and I'm not trying to point anything in his direction. He did bring 2 astronauts home last night without any recognition, by the way. But I will say that that's probably not the smartest strategy.
I give him recognition, but I'm so consumed with the JFK files that I couldn't devote much of the show to it.
No,
you're right. It was incredible.
Look, his numbers are coming down. I mean, Musk favorables are becoming pretty healthily negative. I know that's not really a word, but I
really do think that anyone who wants to defeat Trump and Musk, relying on their numbers coming down, I just still don't get that. There's no election anytime soon.
Yeah, but Mark, they are but hold on a sec. They are the brand. Those two right now are the brand. It's not Mike Johnson. It's not John Thune.
Yeah.
The brand is Donald Trump, and to some extent.
But as long as it doesn't stop them from raising money or getting Republicans in Congress to do what they want, what does it matter in 2025?
Because Republicans do what they want as long as they're powerful, and they're powerful till they're not.
But I don't think Republicans in Congress are going to stop doing what Trump and Musk want if their numbers go down 3 or 5%.
No, but if they go down 10 or 15,
loves this.
But they're not going down 10 or 15 because they're close to their floor.
No, you don't know that. I mean, look, the midterms right now will likely be a referendum on Trump, and today we would all probably agree. J.D. Vance walks into the White House if this is Trump's 3rd term. Trump is unpopular and he has to separate himself. It's a problem for J.D. Vance. So
again, that's not in next year. That's in 3 years.
I hear you, but you don't just wait for 2.5 years to Trump is the sun. Everything orbits around him. You can't ignore.
I agree. But if he's at 48 or 44, I just don't see why that has some big impact on.
Because if he's at 38 or 39, it's a problem.
Well, yes, if he's at 38, but he's not at 38 or 39.
Yeah, but how do you get him there? It doesn't happen organically.
Yeah. All right. Alex, thanks for coming in. How'd you find Two Way?
I've been listening to you guys for a while now.
It's really non-responsive. How'd you find us?
Through X and YouTube.
X. All right, Alex, thank you for coming on. Really enjoy having you.
Have a great day.
We're hoping you were referred by Sean's cousin or something more colorful, but that's all right.
Who was the one?
Shoma, welcome in. Welcome in.
Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for joining. Tell us where you are. For those who don't know, what's on your mind?
I'm in Jersey, and been listening for like a month now. You guys are amazing. Really appreciate what you guys do.
Honored to have you as part of our community.
First of all, why can't we get this on Spotify and like Apple Podcasts?
Someday you will. We're just not ready to be launching podcasts yet, but we will.
Oh, okay. Looking forward to that day. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I got just 2.
You can get it on Friendster.
Yeah. And on your Sidekick, the Sidekick app. Sorry, go ahead.
So I got a question, 2 questions for you guys that I think is like right in your wheelhouse. As a moderate Democrat, I just feel like the file just keeps on just moving the needle, and we don't talk about it. We're for years we're talking about equality, which is amazing, right? And then we switched it out to equity, and it sounds like a similar word, but it's a really completely different thing. And no one even just addressed that. Now on the right, no one left. We just let it skate right by. equality is everyone getting the same opportunity. That's the foundations of what we're all doing. Equity is a whole different thing.
Yes, sir. Is
That
that your
is
question?
brilliant. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
And that is spot on.
Yep.
I don't
Very
know
smart.
if you were spying on my dinner conversation last night with a bunch of folks, but literally that was one of the big dinner conversations. Because someone said something about DEI and somebody brought up the fact that like, I don't have a problem with the D. You know, being diverse makes sense. Having different viewpoints. I agree with that, right? You want people with different things and being inclusive. Look, you know, that's what a team is all about. Like if you're on a team, you want everybody to feel like they're part of the team. They said exactly what you said last night. They go, the E is where I've always had a problem because I don't like, that's not like, there is a system of you're working harder, you should be rewarded for that, not like, hey, we all get the same outcome. Like that's not what a merit-based system's all about. You don't hurt somebody, but at the same time, you want people to excel. You want, I mean, this is whether you're a business or even a team, like that's why you have starters and guys that ride the bench because some people excel at a position or at whether it's a team or a sport or whatever. And so the E, I'm glad you talked about that because it was a great conversation that we had at dinner last night that, that's where I think the left went really wrong.
Do you want to co-host the show at some point?
Yeah, that's awesome.
You available? You're a leading candidate at this
point. I may write my Friday newsletter on the E.
Yeah. I was just thinking the same thing.
It's always about the E.
When's yours come out,
I wrote
Dan?
your name down. I will give you credit in my Substack.
Shlomo, I think you had a second question, correct?
Yeah. So I've been seeing a lot of people talking about this, but I haven't seen anybody that had even like an educated opinion. Now, as historians of the media, at what point did the media switch from saying the news to like how they feel about the news? When did that happen exactly?
So can I wrote my second book called Leading America that no one read. And I had a chapter in it on journalism school. And because I wanted to look at this question. And the funny thing is that when you go to whether it's Columbia or a lot of the other prominent journalism schools, in their mission statement, they have a phrase almost entirely in all of them have the same phrase, which is that they seek to make the world a better place, right? That there's the goal of journalism isn't to tell the who, what, where, why, to inform people. It's to make the world a better place. And so if your definition of making the world a better place is liberal, then that's what you seek to do. And you see this a lot of times now with the journalists now that I've encountered since, my first campaign was in the 90s, that between now is that they really believe that they're activists, that they are actually out to support a cause. And I don't know, I would argue that there was always a bias in my experience, but probably somewhere in the early 2000s, it shifted to becoming an activist. An open activist. It wasn't, they would always deny it, right? That they were biased. The stats showed something very different. But I think that there's a sense now that you can be a lot more open about, quote, being an activist or making your opinion known. Axios famously hired someone who was openly progressive and defended that. They have no bones about it anymore, about hiring and defending activism within their ranks.
Who'd they hire like that?
Alexei, what was her McCammon,
but I don't know that they hired her. She was openly partisan.
Okay, and then when she literally left to go to Teen Vogue and pledged to be highly progressive, and then got thrown under the bus on that job, they welcomed her back and said that we embrace her. When they talked about DEI, they openly said that their reporters should embrace DEI and feel like they have no problem openly allowing journalists to be leftist and embrace it.
And they're a place that claim they're just the opposite too.
Yeah,
well,
they claim they're different than other places because
that's
Dan.
That's Shlomo's question, that they have no problem claiming it and then actually openly allowing their leftist journalists to espouse views and participate, by the way, in leftist activities.
Yeah.
I think there's been kind of like a slow walk to this. You go back to when Reagan came in and a lot of people found what he was trying to do offensive and felt like they needed to try to check him. you then had, during the Clinton era, kind of some of those incredibly partisan fights where a lot of journalists thought some of that stuff should not have been covered. Obama, a lot of journalists were in love with him. And so they thought he was, bending the arc of history and they wanted to be on board. You also have to put in there the rise of Fox News, because they blurred entertainment and journalism, where, I think we all agree the evening hours are more entertainment versus the kind of Brett Baer, what's his name, who comes on sometimes, who came from ABC, Mark,
O'Reilly?
What?
Bill O'Reilly?
No, anyway, I forget, who used to be on the Sunday panels and everything. He's almost semi-retired now.
Brit Hume.
Yeah, Brit Hume. But, they began to blur this where, people were embedded almost. I mean, Sean Hannity literally gets on the phone with Trump and is on strategy calls and everything. And obviously during the Trump era 1.0, you had a lot of journalists who just felt like it was their job to stop him. The Republic was under attack, they thought. So I think it wasn't one moment, but there's been this kind of incremental march toward activism that is, kind of destroying the media.
And again,
everything
Clear. Fox News was a reaction to a literally an entire ecosystem of leftists, whether it's Sam Donaldson at ABC News. I mean, this entire look at ABC News, whether it's Jonathan Karl, Martha Raddatz. I mean, like the entire NBC, ABC, CBS ecosystem is on one side, and so the right likes to point the Fox News.
Hold on a second. I mean, Fox is brilliant. Making money. It's the highest rated, but part of it is entertainment.
Shlomo, one more comment.
Just to follow up on what Dan said, is that I feel like Fox News' motto is like the other side of the news. Like it didn't come into a space where like, yes, it was swinging left and say like, oh, we're gonna just like benchmark the news. They moved to reactionary, and then that forced the other side to create a reactionary. They kept on feeding off each other. But I'll just in closing, I'll say I don't know if you're still doing this, but first time caller, so to check it off your list.
All right, and, thank you, sir. We'll keep the show on probably. Everything my colleague said, for the most part, I agree with. I'll just say one other thing. Trump changed the openness of the bias, but I think one of the biggest understood realities, which I know Sean fully understands, and I don't know if Dan does or not, is the bias was extreme well before Trump.
Yeah.
You shouldn't think that all of a sudden Trump came on the scene, and because he's so outlandish and defies so many democratic norms, that's where the bias came from. It was insidious and pronounced, pernicious, whatever word you want to use, well before Trump came on the scene.
Trump was the result, not the cause.
Thank you for joining, sir.
Thank you for having me.
I think it just became more
follow up
public
on having you guest
Trump.
host. Yeah. All right. Mel, come on in, tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, please.
Hi, I'm in Colorado. I wanted to ask about these Tesla vandalisms and attacks, dealerships, because some of these took place in Colorado, and I drive a Tesla. I bought it before Elon endorsed Trump. I'm a Trump supporter, but I don't feel comfortable going downtown in the woke part of my city because I'm almost sure my car is going to get keyed, broken into, something, because there's no pushback from the leaders about this widespread vandalism. And I can't go to downtown because like it's woke city right there. And I know something's going to happen. And I just wish the Democrats would, they can say, hey, go protest and this and that, but they're like not speaking up about the violence and the chaos that's happening across the country.
Just as an exercise, how would you feel if someone came on here and said, I like to wear my Elizabeth Warren t-shirt, but I live in West Texas and I don't feel comfortable going into town? That would bother you equally?
It would. And I would say if there were examples of Elizabeth Warren t-shirt wearers being attacked and, having their things destroyed, I'd say, yeah, that's totally valid concern.
All right, just making sure. Dan.
Yeah, look, there's no place for destruction of, property, whether it was during the campaign when people were ripping signs out of people's yards and, keying car, there's no place for that, period. I think it's terrible Democrats, it's 80-20 right there, right? You should just say it. Just like Democrats wish that when Trump would say at his rallies, beat the shit out of that person and get him out of here. We wished people would say, wait a second, time out, like not cool, right? Not okay. So totally agree with you. People shouldn't do it. And they should speak up.
Yeah.
Sean.
A couple of things. It's funny. I mean, Tim Walz in that clip we just played talks about beating up people.
Well, he was rhetorically speaking.
Oh, okay. Again,
if a Republican
okay,
said
so
that,
again, I don't disagree with you. Hold on, just Dan, you're right. He was.
I hear you.
But it's like, again, it's he was rhetorical. Trump was serious. He was rhetorical. So I listen. I literally live, a quarter of a mile from a Tesla dealership. Saturday went down. They're standing in front of it. Last night I went to get on 395, go to the city. They're all standing out in front of it. I don't care. You want to stand outside of a Tesla dealership? Good. What a life you have that you waste your time standing outside, flying a Ukrainian, Canadian, Mexican flag outside of a Tesla dealership. But to your point, when the violence comes in, like that's when I'm like, what is going on? I remember my first year at the RNC, we were sending a bunch of interns out. And we had like these T-shirts. I forgot what it said, something about Hillary or something. And they said, "Can we?" One of the interns came up to one of the folks in my shop and said, "Can we put the T-shirts in a bag on our way to the event because we don't want to go on the metro?" And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like but it is interesting because it's the if you wore a MAGA hat outside of about 4 months ago anywhere in an urban area, you would have gotten crushed. So I think that the left, to your point, where is the outrage that they're keying, Dan has to go cool, by the way. He's being told.
God, yeah, my camera just went out again. Okay.
But I get it. It's a morning meeting timeout. You're getting too hot. But
as Buster Poindexter would say, Dan is hot, hot, hot.
Right. I'm with you on the overall point. I wouldn't encourage. I condemn any kind of violence. I don't think people should be. But it was the left that during the Trump administration literally told people to go to restaurants, surround them, harass them. It's the keying of cars now. This is I've personally witnessed it myself, my family. I've seen it among my colleagues. I condemn it in all of its forms, but it is interesting how silent the left and the media are when it's focused in one direction.
Mel, I condemn it too, and I'm sorry you have to, not be able to drive places.
You want to drop your Tesla off in Virginia? I will hold it for you for a little while.
You should have bought it like a good American car, like a Volkswagen or something. That would have been safer.
That's
Mel,
an option.
Yeah, Mel, thank you. Very grateful for coming on.
By the way, there was a great commentary the other day from somebody online talking about how, if you actually are on the left, Tesla is the ultimate American car in terms of parts and sourcing.
Yeah.
Built in California. I mean, it's amazing what they're protesting.
Yeah. Sean, what do you have on tonight?
Alan Dershowitz. You want to talk about a perfect day to talk legal and constitutional issues? Alan Dershowitz, 6:00 tonight.
All right. As we've talked about here many times, you shouldn't think about two-way as just the morning meeting and two-way tonight. There are already some shows on, and there are more coming. And not every show will be for everybody, and not every show is going to be about politics. So if you start seeing shows on our lineup that we'll talk about here that have nothing to do with politics, and they're not for you, you don't need to watch them. They won't ruin this show. They won't change your ability to watch. But we hope you'll like it. And the whole point of two-way, regardless of the topic, long extended conversations that we hope you think of as sophisticated, and they have a two-way component, which means the community gets to ask a question, gets to share conversation in the chat and live video. And we think that format is great for lots of topics: personal finance, health, parenting, kids with childhood diseases, animals, cooking, lots of possibility. And you'll start to see more shows show up. So I want to tell you about first a show that's been on for a bit, which is Megan's show, is on today. Meghan McCain's Happy Hour. Two great guests. One is Katrina Zish, who's an anchor at Newsmax, a really interesting person. You'll enjoy her perspective. And then Michael Moynihan of Two Way. Michael Moynihan of Two Way is on Megan's show in part to promote what's happening tomorrow, which is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Michael's program debuts. Michael Moynihan's program, The Moynihan Report. I'm not sure what it'll be called if there's a guest host, but The Moynihan Report, sponsored by the good folks at FIRE who stand for free speech, debuts tomorrow Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. It'll be on every week, twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Megan's is on Mondays and Wednesdays. And we hope if you know Michael's work, I'm sure you're thrilled because he's really one of the most compelling on-camera journalists I've ever worked with and enjoyed. And if you're not familiar with Michael's work, I recommend you sample the show. And we'll have more to tell you in previewing the show, both on Megan's show tonight and on Two-Way Tonight this evening. So recommend Michael's show to you. Tonight on my show, Two-Way Tonight, Alex Eisenstadt, who has done an extraordinarily good job of promoting his book, Revenge, the Inside Story of Trump's Return to Power. It actually came out yesterday, so you finally can buy and get a copy rather than just pre-order. Lots of more good stories that haven't even been promoted yet. We'll talk about that. And he's a full-time reporter at Axios covering the administration. And so we'll talk about the book a little bit, and we'll talk about news of day. And as always, we will take your questions. And then tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, you'll never guess what's going to happen. Dan with his busted camera and Sean with his pro-Tesla sensibilities will both be back to talk more about what's up regarding the morning meeting news. All right, finally, this Kennedy Center thing. So the Washington Post had a big exclusive. They had audio, we talked about this yesterday, audio from inside Donald Trump's private meeting with the rest of the people, the Kennedy Center board and the new leadership team. And it wasn't super damaging, but it didn't seem like the Trump team put that out themselves. It wasn't clear from the Post story where that audio came from. And the Post, I believe, did not play the audio. Okay. Today, the New York Times has the audio too, and they posted snippets of the audio, and they wrote about it, and they said that the recording was authenticated by somebody in the room. Now, to me, that leads to one of two possibilities: either it was given out by the Trump folks that they wanted it out, or that there was someone in the room who shouldn't have been in the room because they weren't a Trump loyalist and they were going to leak it. The reason I bring this up, Sean and Dan and everyone else, is I find it so interesting that the Washington Post got it, and then the Times got it too. And sometimes that happens in journalism because the editors say, hey, we're getting scooped by the Post. Somebody, let's figure out where it came from. But it does lead you to believe that someone was willing to hand this out. So, Sean, based on the additional data, who done it? Who recorded that and leaked it based on what we now know? What kind of person?
I still believe somebody inside the room did it.
But a Trump loyalist?
No. I mean, there are some holdovers on that board that are still like. So a staff member from the Kennedy Center, I'm sure that when there were other folks,
it could have been the gal serving the iced tea.
But also just remember that in the New York Times it said confirmed by a participant. So in other words, you could say, is this a legitimate recording? Yes, it's a legitimate. I didn't hand it over to you. I'm just confirming that that's, yes, he said everything. That's him. This isn't AI. So I didn't read as much into it as that.
Okay.
It's just, this is,
Dan, who do you think recorded it and leaked it?
I don't know, because if the Trump people did it, are you trying to show that he's really involved and he has lots of ideas and he's the great, television producer? And if you hate Trump, are you just thinking it embarrasses him because it's somewhat small compared to the rest of the office? I'm not really sure it's salacious if you live in the Beltway, really, but otherwise, I'm not sure what one would get out of this. I don't think Trump looks bad. I find it amusing.
The tell I always have is who's the reporter, right? And if it was a political reporter that scooped it or contributed to it, I'd say, okay, these are at least the New York Times one, and even the Post one, I believe are like arts and culture reporters, correct? Right. So that leads me, I mean, that's not the kind of guy that Rick Grinnell isn't the kind of guy who's like, hey, let me go find out who the culture reporter is for the Times or the Post.
Although sometimes, as you know, stories are laundered. So they'll give it to one reporter and then they'll give it to somebody else to keep the identity of the source a little safer. That happens.
Yeah. He's talking about the Kennedy Center mission. He's not talking about blowing it up.
I don't know. I still believe it was a Kennedy Center person.
I think I will say this with some knowledge. Stay tuned. Okay?
By the way,
now tune into Two-Way Tonight. Recordings will be
not sure. Get in terms of who did it and what their motive was. Get ready to hit the buzzer.
It's gonna come
out.
Huh? What's the over under on it? The leak coming out?
I think it's pretty high, and I think when it does, you will be interested. Get ready to hit your buzzer.
Watergate.
Get ready to hit your buzzer.
This is Watergate too.
This is unrelated. Exactly. Get ready to hit your buzzer. What was the? I don't need the name, but what was the identity? the person who leaked the Mitt Romney fundraiser where he said the 48%, correct? Member of the catering staff. Member of the catering staff. That's member of the catering staff. I don't know that he was a waiter per se. Member of the catering staff. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say for now.
Wait, that's where I am on this. This is yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, can I just a little personal privilege, Mark? I tweeted it out. New York Times has the obituary of Tony Dolan today. This guy, he is one of the great speechwriters of our time. Served multiple presidents and went back into service for Trump in the first term and subsequently in the second term. I just urge anyone, if you're a political person, I tweeted the New York Times op-ed out. That's the extent to which I will tweet New York Times. But he was a great person, kind, generous, and the kind of person that we should want in politics. And I send my condolences to Tony's family for his passing. It was way too early.
Great guy and incredibly talented guy. Thank you all for watching. I got to get over to Smirconish. So if you got SiriusXM, I'll see you there in 3 minutes. And I'll see you tonight at 6 o'clock, Megan at 5 Eastern. And then we'll be back 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks for everybody for the questions. The show lives another day because we had 3 new community members participating. Have a wonderful day, everybody.